Hi, it's Lori Brown with empowerednurses.org, and today we have a very, very special guest. I know you're going to absolutely love her. It's BrianaBinion, and Briana is a neuro-linguistic programming expert, or NLP practitioner. And so you're probably thinking, what's NLP and what are we here to talk about? So, Briana, can you explain to our guests what NLP is?
Yes. NLP actually is a study of the mind. It's actually the number one technology. And it's actually the study of what we do and why we do it in a sense. And it really is a study that creates more tools for individuals to use when it comes to navigating a new route in life and creating a new experience. So the best way I like to describe NLP is a study of successful communication and behavior. And it's a study that started back in the early 60s by Richard Bandler. And he studied the top people in whatever field they were, whether they were, psychotherapists or, the top artists. And he figured out what is it that they thought and what is it that they did when they achieved the most excellent results. And it all started from the mindset and how they chose to look at things. And that's really what NLP is. It creates an awareness of yourself first. And that when you have more awareness of yourself as into why you do things and the pattern, because we all have patterns, and our patterns start as early as when we wake up in the morning. And the patterns of emotions actually start as early as we wake up in the morning. So when you have a more increased awareness of what your patterns are, you're able to change them and navigate them, and also be able to see others' patterns and navigate around them as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Because as nurses, we're so busy taking care of everybody else that we don't take time for ourselves. And there are things that we can learn through NLP that will help us improve our communication with our coworkers, our supervisors, and even our families and friends.
Absolutely.
So what advice would you have for nurses on how to use NLP to help with communication?
Well, in NLP, we have something called 8 key presuppositions. And even though there's 8, I'm just going to really focus on 2 right now. Okay. And one of the 2 is the ability to change the process by which we experience reality is often more valuable than changing the content of our reality. Mm-hmm. So it's more easier to deal with our reality in our inner world than it is to change the content in our outer world. And I know sometimes nurses feel, frustrated. And I kind of put a little acronym together of nurse to really kind of help you guys understand what it is that you can do maybe starting today to really help you. And the first thing with nursing is you need to notice. You need to really notice what's going on inside you first. And when you feel you're most frustrated, when you feel the most pain, when you feel the most anxiety, you really want to notice, when is that coming? Is that coming from the time you think about work? Does it start when you see that person at work? Does it start when you're dealing with your patients? So really noticing, that's the first thing that in NLP we're going to, really note. To change the reality, we need to notice what's going on in it first. And that takes time to stop. And as nurses, but you guys are always stopping and taking care of other people, but you don't really stop and really take a look at yourself. So that's really the first key. And then the U is for uncovering. We need to uncover and put words to the emotions that we feel. And ultimately that is really hard because sometimes when we just know we're angry, and all anger, pain, and frustration, it lives inside. It doesn't really live in our environment. So once we can uncover what is living on the inside and where is it coming, I know some people, when they get frustrated, they get sick to their stomach. Me, when I get frustrated or angry, I have a lot of visual thoughts that are running through my head. So we really just want to notice what it is and what is it saying? What is it saying to us? And then the U would be to uncover it. And as you uncover those feelings and you notice what it is that is holding us back or what is stopping us, then we can do the next thing, which is the next acronym letter, which is R. We can reflect and respond accordingly. So once we reflect on what it is we're feeling, who am I feeling it with, when does it happen, then we can take a look at something you may have seen before. I wrote little notes, is that E plus R equals O. Because whatever the event is, we all automatically have a pattern of the way we're going to respond to it.
Yeah.
And it creates the outcome. Mm-hmm. So the notice would be to notice the event and then to maybe reflect and respond a different way so we can choose an outcome. And what I love about NLP is that it enables you to choose maybe 3 or 4 different ways to choose to respond in the future that actually feel almost as natural as the one you've always been responding to. And that's what I love about just having that tool, because I know sometimes when we think about, being the bigger person in our environment, sometimes we think that that's such a big burden for us because it's so unnatural for how we feel. But NLP actually gives you a tool that feels natural to you and actually gives you the result that you want.
Awesome. So we have notice, uncover, respond, and then what else?
And then the S will be see. You need to be able to see yourself in that future circumstance, because ultimately, whatever things that we're experiencing in our environment, it's going to happen again and again and again, right?
Yeah,
because
we keep creating, the same results.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you see yourself in that future predicament, as you see yourself with that future person or that future pain, I want you to think of 3 different alternative responses that actually feel good to you. And the reason why I usually try to say 3 is because, at any given moment, you will have time to reflect. If you just have one thing you can do, the chances of you taking that is like really, really slim. But when you think of 3 alternatives, it really conditions the subconscious mind to act on those new ideas versus the past patterns that keep us holding back and keep us in that mental state of frustration.
Wow. Okay.
And then the last would be E, is to expect the positive results. We really want to come into an environment, as we look at our emotions and how we feel, we want to expect that things can change. We want to expect that whatever we're going to do, it's definitely going to work. So that's my nurse acronym. So it's notice what's going on, you want to uncover, and you want to reflect and respond accordingly. And you also want to see into the future and then expect the results that you desire.
That sounds great. So I know when I'm like in the middle of things, and I've heard, this is one of my favorite stories to tell about a nurse. She was, they were short-staffed. She was working in the ICU. There were 4 nurses for 8 patients. 1 patient coded, and so 3 of the nurses were assisting with the code. And the last nurse was watching 7 patients. And in ICU, that's an unbelievably heavy load. Wow. And one of those patients was going bad, and nobody noticed. I believe the person that I know was in the code. Nobody noticed, and this patient coded too. And having 2 codes in the same night is kind of unheard of, but they did. And so she was really mad, and she took that code sheet and she slammed it on her manager's desk, and she says, "This is what happens when we don't have enough staff." And instead of stopping and responding, and she says, "I'm so grateful I didn't get fired." So when you're in the heat of the moment, how do you stop like that? And how do you, how do you regroup to come up with a different response?
Well, first thing I would like to know, I would ask her, would be something is where, because ultimately we know she's frustrated with the environment, but what is happening inside? Is she feeling, overwhelmed? Is it a pressure that she has? So finally, when something happens, she, boom, exploded. I would want to know, is it a fear maybe that she has as far as asking for help? So she waits till it's too late. You see what I'm saying? I would really want to know and ask her maybe when those situations happens, what could she do differently? Or what have other people done differently in that situation? Because sometimes our mind is trained to figure out what doesn't work. And then we need to figure out what does work and ask those who know what does work instead of trying to figure out what doesn't work. So it sounds like a lot of her frustration over her slamming the paper on the desk, it's an inner anger, it's an inner frustration that she feels bad about her not seeking the help. You see what I'm saying? So you really have to take a look at that event and really dissect it and pull it apart to figure out what was the anger coming from? Where was the real complete source? And once you figure out what the complete source is, you want to always ask them to reflect on when have they been in similar situations and how did they get through it? Because ultimately, sometimes when we're going through our turmoil, we forget how we got through something similar in the past. I was speaking to a young lady yesterday, and she was about to retire, actually.
Uh-huh.
She was in retirement, and she was really anxious about what that was going to look like for her. And a lot of her anxiety came from the unknown. She was worried about her health. Her health was perfectly fine now, but she was worried about her health. Or she was worried about being alone. That all her kids were grown, and she's at the age where she's always belonged to someone, whether it was her job or whether it was her family. But now she's severing ties with her job, so now she feels like she feels alone. Yeah. So really, with NLP, we not only do we look at the content, which is what happened and who was in it, but we look at the context that it's in. So the context has to deal with how you feel about it and the emotions that were involved within this event. And the way your brain stores it is you store it in those two, the content and context. So we can change one of the two. We can change, maybe play around with the content a little bit, or we can play around with the context. We can actually pretty much have a better resolution when it comes to dealing with those problems in the future, because now she's more aware of what was holding her back versus just a feeling. Sometimes we just have these feelings, and while we think we know where they're coming from, we really truly haven't identified the source. And which brings me to my next question, my next NLP presupposition, which is the resources the individual needs to effect change in their environment are already within them. So we don't have to look outside of ourselves to really find out what it is that we need to do to affect change, the change that we want to see. Yeah. The answers are already within. We just need to quiet our mind a little bit to be able to see what it is that we need to do.
Yeah, and because her whole goal was to create change and get more staff, but to go and complain about it isn't going to work. It's going to take creating a win-win situation with your supervisor to get more staff when the acuity level is that high.
And learning also how to communicate. Sometimes we use the words and out of our frustration, we might use words like, this is just too much overwhelming, versus using the words like, I need support in.
Yeah.
And when you say those words, I need support in, it just certain words that come off when you say it in a more positive way. Instead of complaining with the negatives, the brain computes positives. I know that I watched one nurse, and she said that when she dealt with her patients, instead of asking them, are you still having pain? She decided to give them a positive. So she's saying, are you feeling better yet?
Yeah.
So sometimes your brain can't focus on the negative at the same time. So that forces the patient to focus, am I feeling better yet? Versus, are you still feeling pain? Because it caused them to focus on the pain. So, maybe when she's explaining to her superior what is going on, she could state it in a more positive. Like, I need support in this area. Or, is there a way that I can support you so we have more staff in this area? And just offering your support when you need support is one of the key things when it comes to having understanding and communication both ways.
And you talked about selecting a tool and have 3 different tools available. What kind of tools are you talking about?
Well, tools as far as a different pattern to operate and respond in. So if someone was to, if I felt in a work environment that I was overly stressed and I was overly worked and I didn't have the support, my normal response would probably be to, maybe, be kind of tight with the patients, or maybe be kind of snappy when it comes to, talking to my coworkers. So another idea that I could do, because every behavior has a positive context. We can use that snappy attitude somewhere in life, right? But just to work in a work environment. So we need to choose another way that we can have that positive, the same results we want to get. Like, we want to get our message across, but we want to choose another way than what we've previously been, as far as previously, I lost the words, previously operated in. We want to choose another mode, another way. We want to navigate another way. So what I like to do in those situations is I try to figure out what am I trying to protect? Because ultimately, if I'm getting angry, it's because I feel like I'm not being heard. So it's another way that I can be heard, but still express myself, but not in an angry way. So if someone's angry, they're trying to make themselves appear bigger and appear, more in authoritative state. Yeah. So what's another way that you can satisfy that, but not acting out that way?
Well, I think that's a big problem with nurses. They don't feel like they're heard. So they do have a lot of anger inside because of it.
Mm-hmm. So really tapping into that individual pain and hurt, because ultimately some people might feel sadness. And when you feel sad, that's another need that needs to be fulfilled. Maybe they need the comfort. You see, we all have different areas that we might need help in. So really identifying what is it serving? What is your anger serving? Because it's serving somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere along that it's serving you somehow. We just need to make sure that it doesn't serve you and then disserve others, you know?
Yeah.
So finding 3 ways is relatively simple. It just takes a little bit of thought. So one, sometimes we do sentence stems, and a sentence stem would be when you're in the heat of the moment, is if I had 5% more cool, what would I choose to do differently right now? Mm-hmm. If I had 5% more boldness and self-esteem, what would I do differently in this moment? Mm-hmm. So really just thinking of your higher self. It doesn't have to be like completely out of your norm, but just if you just could take it up 5%, what would you do differently and better? If you were just 5% more better at your communication, how would you communicate what you want to say to your boss? If you were just 5%, and usually when we ask ourselves those questions, it makes that brain tick. It makes it tick in new ways, because that's a positive.
Yeah.
I have 5% more power. Mm-hmm. I would do this differently. I would do that. I would take this leap. I would take this stand. I would, maybe get some of my nurses together and we would band together in harmony. Maybe we would, create the safe space that we're going to support each other before our work shift. Like, there's all kinds of different ways, but it's actually going to take that little bit of 5% of creativity, of power, of ambition, to really go to your higher self.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's great information. Awesome. Thank you. And I am blown away because I didn't know that you had created like this whole nurse acronym, which I was just
I wanted to be prepared, and I wanted to make sure the nurses was something that that would stick in their mind. And I think the first thing is the first in is just notice. Just notice how you feel, being aware of how you feel, and being okay with how you feel, not labeling it good or bad. Yeah. It's just starting to look at it. And I like NLP because to me, it's like a scientific look at our problems. When you're doing an experiment in school and you're, making your science project board, you're not looking at it like, oh my God, this is bad. Or you're just creating it. You're just examining. You're just looking at the facts. So in a sense, NLP for me, it helps me just look at the facts of what's going on. Just look at the facts to realize that I have more control than I think that I have, and not lose the control that I have.
Yeah.
And ultimately, people are stuck in their patterns. So if you know how the people in your environment, are patterned to react, you can pretty much find a way to shift it and actually play with it a little bit more versus having to go over their head. You can actually develop rapport unconsciously with your employers, and also the tone of voice that you use with your employers. There's certain tones of voice that we use when we're seeking approval. So maybe when you're asking your employer for something like here, because that little here, when you do that up, that means you're seeking approval. Versus when you say something like, you know what, I really need help in this area. And then you match your supervisor because they can listen to you and they don't unconsciously want to take that superior position over you and not really hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a little, that's a little nugget right there too about the tone. Sometimes the tone that we're talking to our coworkers in, it really isn't beneficial. Yeah. And one other NLP presuppositions is that the meaning of the communication is the response you get. So no matter how well you said something, no matter how your positive intent, whatever they respond back to you is the meaning of the communication. So that makes you have to, realize you need to be even more creative when it comes to communicating with your coworkers or your patients.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do is I wear a red string so I will notice. It's just a reminder for me to notice and what I'm thinking and am I being judgmental and things like that. And it really helps me. So whatever tool that you need to use to help you notice when you're feeling a certain way or when you're not responding the way you want to respond, even a rubber band works fine. So
absolutely. Or singing a tune in your head. Oh. Or, and one of my favorites is when people really work my nerves, I turn them into characters.
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes, certain voices can really, get on my nerves. So instead of me hearing their nagging voice the way I hear it, I turn them into something, funny. So that way, the emotion that I have towards it is a lot different. I might turn them into a little baby voice. So instead of them saying, you need to get back on the clock, I hear, you need to get back on the clock. I reframe it that way I can have the results that I want. I don't want to harbor my feelings. I don't want to do that because it feels yucky. So if I have to turn you into a frog, I'm a real visual person. So what I have to do to help me, maintain my sanity, for me to give you the respect, the decency of respect, even if you're not really do that respect, it really helps me because I'm a visual person to really reframe what I see, reframe what I'm hearing to get the results that I want. And so yours just happens to be a red band. And some people, they have anchors, and that's what we call anchors in NLP.
Oh, okay.
Some people have songs, certain songs, when they're in a bad mood, they just put on a song and they just sort of think more positive thoughts. So anchors are really, really good. And an anchor could be anything that brings you back to a certain memory or a place that you feel good. And that's something that we all need. We all need that anchor friend. We all need that anchor loved one. We all need an anchor somehow, somewhere. And we have to learn how to always be able to have that place where we can tap into our own anchor. And that's what NLP is all about, tapping into your inner anchor that you have, because you are strong. In what you know, you are strong. You are right. Just as right as they are, you're just as right as they are, right? Because truth is relative to who is speaking it. Yeah. So just realizing that you're not crazy, that your ideas are valid, but there's a better way to communicate them, and there's millions of ways to communicate them. So don't really lock yourself into that pattern of thinking.
Yeah, and use triggers too. Like when you hit the floor, say a mantra to yourself. Say something of gratitude. Do something that's going to help you be in the best frame to give the best patient care that you can.
And it's like managing your state.
Yeah.
During the day, I'm always trying to manage the state that I'm in. Yeah. And I always I'm a very happy person most of the time. So I'm always aware. So when I have that little pull of my energy, I have to immediately stop and notice, where is it coming from? Why do I feel this way? Yeah. How's it happening? And how much time am I spending? Sometimes after we leave work, we're thinking about our problems long after we're gone. Yeah. And that right there is a negative chatter. So in a sense, it's a diss record, I like to call it. It's a diss record that we have playing in our head, and we really need to turn up the powerful self-talk. And so another sentence I would say to myself before work would be, my powerful self-talk tells me that I should today. Yeah. And really learning how to act on that powerful self-talk is really key, because that powerful self-talk is connected to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is what controls your habits, your behaviors, and everything. So just really communicating to yourself in the most positive way will take us a lot further than communicating the negative thoughts.
Would you please share about pressing play on the positive and pause on the negative? That
NLP
technique. Well, I love that one.
All right. Well, I kind of think that because we have two minds, right? And so one mind over here will be your conscious, and this will be your subconscious. And your subconscious mind, it never sleeps. It records everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm like a disc jockey right here. So I'm recording everything that I have over here. It's nonstop. And then your conscious mind, even though intellectually we know we have all these powers that we can use, we won't use them because it'll put us in an uncomfortable vibration. And that subconscious mind, sometimes it has positive chatter, and sometimes it has negative chatter. And sometimes we can barely hear that negative chatter. And sometimes we try to fight that negative chatter in our head. But really, when you speak it out, you actually fight it. It's more powerful. Mm-hmm. So to put more emphasis on that powerful self-talk, I listen to what is my mind telling me negative, and then I ask myself, what is my powerful self telling me? And I say it from my lips. Because it's hard to fight a battle in your head, Yeah. And actually, I actually speak it from my lips, and that gives it more power. And so I can internalize it and actually hear. Sometimes we need to hear our own self say our positive self-talk versus it just being a record in our head. Sometimes our body and our mind needs us to tell ourselves, you know what? I care about myself. I am a great nurse. My services are needed. Everywhere, every person I touch, patients are getting healed in my presence. And so it all goes along with positive affirmations. A lot of things that we know, the value that we bring to the nursing field, even though it goes unnoticed, we know the value we bring.
Yes.
So before you go to work, if you could turn up that powerful value that you bring. Like, I know when I go into a work environment, I know I'm the life of the party. I know that. So when I go there, that's the kind of dialogue that I'm going to tell myself. Like, you're a light. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're going to serve. People are going to be transformed. That's a powerful self-talk. My negative self-talk might say something like, oh my God, how are they going to receive this? What are they going to say? Oh, I feel like anxious inside. I have butterflies. Those are all, in a sense, negative. Mm-hmm. So I want to neutralize my feelings. I want to neutralize so where I can come in and be present in the moment. And I think powerful self-talk is something that we don't turn up enough.
Yeah.
And really getting in the habit of turning up the powerful self-talk, I think, is truly key when it comes to NLP. Because really, NLP is not something, once people know NLP, I realize that they're like, hey, I've been doing this all my life. But they didn't really know the system or how powerful it is to really play on that positive self-talk.
Right.
So I think that NLP definitely makes you more aware of the inner power that you have that, can definitely shine out.
And you can also physically push pause on the negative self-talk and play on the positive self-talk so that you actually have a visual anchor or touching anchor of you're actually stopping this. I'm not going to tolerate this little voice in my head who tells me I can't do it anymore. I'm going to push play on the voice that empowers me and tells me I can.
And absolutely, and give yourself a chance to experience the results of powerful self-talk. Sometimes we give ourselves plenty opportunity to experience what the negative self-talk tells us, but we're so uncomfortable to change that pattern and experience what the powerful self-talk tells us. So that is another tip I would say, give yourself a chance to experience the powerful self-talk, because that can be life-changing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you have just been amazing. You've given us so much value and so many things that we didn't, that for me anyways, that I think about but didn't know quite how to navigate or deal with, like in terms of, I knew about the notice but how to deal with it. And the sentence stems were great. And the if you have a voice in your head or a person who's irritating, turn them into a frog. I love that.
Or change their voice, because ultimately in NLP we have just like your senses. You have visual, auditory, kinesthetic, your touch, your sound. So those are all modalities that we can play with when we're dealing with different people in our environment. So me, because I'm more visual, I play with the visuals in my environment. Some other people might be more kinesthetic. So instead of feeling ill when they're around, I challenge myself to feel powerful when they're around, to feel so ecstatically good. So there's always something to play with in your environment as far as how we receive our environment through our senses. We can always play with it just a little bit. Because, if you think about it, we're playing with those all the time. There's times that you could say something to someone and you're like, how did they get that off of what I just said, right? Because they're playing with your modality. They're playing with what they heard, right? Yeah, and we all play with what we see and hear differently. So really being able to match and not run that interference with others and what they're thinking and what they see is another big key when it comes to developing rapport with our coworkers and patients.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So, Briana, if they would like to learn further from you, how can they reach you?
I have a website called BrianaBinion.com. That's BRIANA. And Binion is spelled B like boy, INION. BrianaBinion.com. And I have some videos via YouTube that I talk about NLP and how the mind, the power of positive thinking. And you'll be looking forward to seeing more things from me in the very, very near future.
Well, wonderful. You've been just absolutely amazing.
I appreciate you having me, Lori.
So much. And I'm sure our viewers learned so much from you, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
Well, have an awesome, awesome day. And again, thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.